In the age where Hololive reigned supreme, when Nijisanji En did not yet have their blemished reputation, and when VShojo still stood proud and strong, there used to be two main underground platforms on the internet where Western fans of VTubers, primarily those that watched corpo VTubers, would congregate at to discuss their most favorite and/or most hated VTubers behind the safety of anonymity. The first is 4chan, which has its own notoriety, but it is undeniably still home and active to many VTuber fans to this day. The other is the focus of today's video, the now defunct site called NIFCO or Ikatog, also known colloquially in the VTuber space as, quote, the doc site. This is a reminder that this site is no longer around, and the purpose of this video is to archive its existence as part of VTubing history. Any potential docs information will be censored in the video like an SCP file, and any discussion or allusion to anyone's private info is not allowed in the comments section. Thank you. With that, let's begin. NIFCO is a site that, apparently, was registered all the way back in 2005. It originally was actually a forum site for the New York film critics online community that seemed to be steadily but surely growing year by year, even in 2010. Sometime between 2010 and 2019, however, the film critics community redirected to a different site called nifco.proboards.com, which seems to align more with its forum nature. Starting sometime around the summer of 2021, however, the site appears to be back and running, but now the site is in Japanese and its initial focus seemed to be on the Japanese agency VTubers, specifically with the purpose to dig into these VTubers' personal histories. You see, when it comes to reputable agencies, almost every corpo VTuber that debuts under them typically has some sort of, quote, previous life or PL before becoming that corporate VTuber. Most corporations are not picking up random people off the street to suddenly invest hundreds or thousands of dollars to become VTubers. Instead, they typically choose someone who has a history of content creation, whether that is streaming, being an idol, or some form of entertainment experience because, well, corpo VTubing is basically a job. Now, one thing you may know about VTubers is that VTubing allows someone to be anonymous behind the avatar. This means details about their face, their background, and even their voice can all be hidden or altered by the simple magic of technology. On one hand, it's pretty neat for people like me who wouldn't have taken up the mantle of content creation in the first place if not allowed some bit of anonymity. But it has its downsides too, from getting insults like, "Oh, you must be a man or secretly ugly behind the model," to strange others that see this anonymity more like a mysterious allure that they want to then unmask all that they can, whether purely for curiosity's sake or malicious purposes. NIFCO, unfortunately, seemed to specialize in finding and archiving this sort of private information, especially for corporate VTubers in general. Now, I shouldn't have to say this, but peeping into and exposing the private information of anyone who doesn't consent is doxing and a huge moral no-no on the internet. When it comes to VTubers in particular, it's generally seen as taboo because it sort of ruins the kayfabe if you go prying into who they were and what they were like in the past. After all, that virtual avatar on your screen, especially corpo VTubers, should be purely for escapism and entertainment, right? Well, unfortunately, there's also a lot of parasocial weirdos in the VTuber community who want all that nitty-gritty details about their corpo favorite sweetheart or even their most hated idol, for reasons that can vary from essentially stalking to try one day get their idol to fall in love with them in real life, or to downright threaten their very existence. NIFCO was unfortunately a site that, at many times, hosted very invasive information on these agency VTubers, including their real names, their date of birth, their last known living locations, their photos of selfies and friends and family, and whether or not they even had partners, and if so, how many and if any were currently active. It wasn't very savory stuff. And considering this barrage of information was the first thing you'd see if you clicked on any VTuber's page, especially the older ones, was really creepy. A lot of the information was also linked to the original sources to, quote, prove its authenticity. I personally can't comment how accurate all that information was on this site, but I know many in the VTuber scene did use this site to find and collate their information on various corpo VTubers. In late 2021, the site started adding more corpo VTubers, this time including from Hololive English Council. After each new wave of corpo VTubers were announced, NIFCO made sure to make pages for each of the members. No corpo VTuber from any reputable large agency was spared. It was the hub for, quote, VTuber docs info that was initially quietly spread throughout the scene in hushed tones, both for the purpose of keeping tabs and learning where each of the waves of new debuting VTubers came from and what info and pictures people can glean, but also because, well, this site had a comment section, one that you can comment on without even making an account. Naturally, having anonymous comments leads to all sorts of interactions. You have your standard trolls that leave nasty comments about people's OGs, those that rage baited and just stirred the pot in general because they could. There were also genuine fans of these VTubers, talking away and finding fellow kinship in their Oshi's communities on this taboo-like site, supposedly far from prying eyes of the corpo VTuber that they were talking about. This site was also used for people to share archives of typically unarchived streams, and even sending people membership-only content or voice packs. While the archives were welcomed, there was also people who condemned the sharing of voice packs as that took away from profiting the streamers themselves. But it didn't stop people from engaging in said practice, often using the site's comment section as the hub to find these, quote, dealers, like drug dealers. For a time, it seemed like a safe haven for fans of VTubers to talk, criticize, praise, or flat out horny post about their Oshi without fear of reprisal. But this peace would not last. Sometime around 2022 and early 2023, NIFCO started getting, quote, leaked to more of the public spaces. The doc site would be referred to as such more commonly and openly, typically by naive fans, often in YouTube comment section or on their fan Twitter accounts, and this eventually led to more people finding out about it and checking it out. It became sort of an open secret to die-hard fans of corpo VTubers, and despite many condemning the site's very existence just because of all the docs info present on it in varying degrees of severity, it was still something many in the scene were aware of at the time. One such example of this public exposure is a Twitter user by the name of Hololive Researcher, and based on their page, they seem to be someone who frequently kept tabs on certain Hololive VTubers and posted their PL images. In June of 2023, they quit with the message, "Hello, I will be quitting this account because I have nothing more to post. Please use nifco.org if you want to find more about Hololive IRL or in real life." And this post had over 1,000 likes and hundreds of comments. Most of the comments are positive, going, "I'll miss you," and after Nifco went down, later said, "Where do I find the information?" Which clearly indicates that some unfortunately still desire this unsavory kind of information for whatever reason. With the existence of these anonymous pages where fans congregate and talk about VTubers, naturally this also meant that some corpo VTubers themselves were also nosy and began checking their pages' comment sections just to see what the fans were secretly saying about them behind their backs. There were some instances where new waves, typically about male VTubers, were debuting and some were questioning which recently graduated indie male VTuber it could be, to the point that some briefly went out of their hiatus to say, "No, that person isn't me, lol." Now, within the doxing sites were various factions, one could say. You see, each page and comment section had a sort of different vibe to it, if that makes sense. While the thing that tied everyone together was that they were a fan or watcher or casual viewer of VTubers, each person's page was sometimes a reflection of their Oshi's community, and some were very much not. The most infamous page on Nifco was Nina Kosaka's page. Yes, the very fox mom from Niji-en. Her page was known by many who frequented that site as being basically where all the 4chaners go, where slurs get thrown around, trolling and rage baiting happened often, and overall it was just controversial and divisive as hell. This persisted even after Nina graduated, as many went to just Nina's page to use the comment section as an active forum. It turns out it's very much mostly an unregulated landfill of VTuber adjacent talk. One can see that by 2024, there were over 350,000 comments and over 4,000 pages of discussion. There is an upvote and downvote system to see what people generally vibed with, and typically the most downvoted ones were deemed as trolls or bad takes. There were also rumors that, despite mostly being full of anonymous commenters and an unknown site owner, there were somehow still moderators, or janitors as they were called, that did occasionally delete comments. I'm not sure how often those occurred, but supposedly they existed. Anyway, other comment sections were more of a general vibe, especially in the last year of NIFCO's existence in 2024, since the site owner kind of got lazy and just made a general page for each wave as a whole rather than individual pages for VTubers, unless they were notably popular. These blanket pages didn't even have docs information on them. Besides, it would be helpful if you could submit any information or useful information you would like to see in the article. Please send any content that cannot be posted publicly to the administrator through this page. This page is a temporary page until individual articles are completed, at least according to Google Translate. To which I'm like 90% sure no one actually sent info and only used those pages purely as a comment forum. Even if the docs information wasn't clearly lined out as the older pages, it didn't stop people from freely discussing about the VTubers' PLs, images, and any personal information they had in the comments section. They also often drowned out the information by gushing about their OGs, but since the comments don't really get deleted, it was also a way to kind of see internal fandom drama, complaints, and generally keep up with what the people in each wave were doing or planning on doing that can be looked back on if needed. I consider these pages' comment sections more like a snapshot into the wacky minds of parasocial simping VTuber fans, and for the most part, it's about what you imagine, including the good and the bad. But it's definitely obvious that not all parts of the sites were like that. Some were instead filled with strife like Nina's page as mentioned earlier, or even other Niji-sanji EN pages, especially when Niji-sanji's reputation started going steadily downhill with their sudden and oftentimes controversial terminations. But the site wasn't a stable thing in itself. Because of it hosting controversial and oftentimes private and highly invasive information, it was often rumored to be subject to numerous takedown requests from the corporations that sought to protect their agency VTubers. This was supported by the fact that early on in its creation, they used to have images of said VTubers, but at some point the images were removed and instead replaced with text. It was also prone to DDoS attacks, which prompted many Cloudflare errors, and anytime a VTuber wave was debuting or graduating, the site would basically crash as pretty much everyone tried going there to ask, "What's going on? Who knows the tea? What's up?" Which only prompted rumor mongering and occasional false information that people then propagated on other platforms like Twitter and Reddit until eventually people settled on a consensus and supposedly the truth. By April 2024, the site was effectively shut down. Many who tried to access it could not, and it was even posted on the Reddit sub r/kurosanji with "Did the doc site go down?" And supposedly it was suspended by the web hosting provider according to the topmost Reddit comment. During this time, and especially on the subreddit in particular, many blamed the Niji-sanji EN fans for allegedly perpetuating that site. There are also rumors that, supposedly, Niji-sanji EN fans were using that doc site to make harassment campaigns and plans to harm anyone who opposed Niji-sanji. But I personally don't think that was actually happening. There was a lot of misinformation spread on that site, as it was a site that thrived in anonymity. And with anonymity on the internet comes people who will say and do things to try and make someone they dislike look bad. During this time, Selen Tatsuki had just been terminated and had gone through an ordeal mentally, and tensions were high about Niji-sanji's reputation, and Niji-sanji fans were rightfully upset. But in this tribalistic fandom war between two large corpos, there is the possibility of those on the other side who would no doubt want to quote pin false information to make these upset fans look even more downright deranged. But it could also very well be possible it was indeed genuinely malicious from the Niji-sanji fans themselves. Truly, no one will know because the site was promptly shut down and nothing seemed to come of such quote harassment campaigns, and that could be attributed to the timely shutdown of the site, or it could have been all faked in the first place. No one knows. So the question now is, where is everyone who frequented this site now? Well, apparently, 4chan is where most of the frequent NIFCO dwellers went. 4chan has strict rules against posting docs information of VTubers, so finding information like that is significantly harder for the more parasocial freaks. But generally, information about the previous life or PLs are still nodded to on occasion, but it's definitely more of a hush-hush kind of tone. Personally, I think it's safer in the long run that the easily accessible and actual docs info is gone for good. The doxing part of NIFCO was always the most controversial aspect of the site's existence, even if I believe a majority of its regular users often just went to the comments section to talk about their favorite corpo VTubers or to find out previous lives and just not dig further. While on that topic of previous lives, I know many still ask, who is this new corpo VTuber and who were they in the past? Whenever new waves debut in the corpo scene. After all, you often get a wave of sudden indie VTubers graduating, often leaving cryptic messages of "see you next time" or some sort, usually months in advance. This sort of information is significantly harder to find nowadays and connect to the relevant corpo VTubers, but the most die-hard fans will often be the way the information spreads nowadays, most likely through fan Discord servers or through the grapevines. As it stands, anyone who desperately wants this PL information will now have to put in a lot more work, but I think this is for the better in the long run for the protection of the corpo VTubers as they start their new jobs. It, at least, sort of gatekeeps the parasocial ones that could misuse the information for nefarious deeds. Overall, though, it's for the best that NIFCO is gone. A lot of the information on there could be dangerous if it fell to the wrong hands, and given that VTuber fans typically tend to be incredibly parasocial, even more so than regular streamer fans, it could 100% lead to unsavory things if left unchecked. We are just lucky that, as far as VTubers have gone, it hasn't led to anything crazy. Not as crazy as whatever happens each year from TwitchCon, at least. Anyway, in whichever manner the site was taken down, whether from Cover Corp or any color finally taking legal action against the site owner, or whether Cloudflare finally realized what was truly on that site they were helping host, this was the brief history of the doc site that the Western VTuber community silently used and occasionally publicly endorsed until its eventual demise. Now, the only NIFCO site left is the New York Film Critics Online, which is entirely different from a VTubing doxing site. Please don't bother the New York Film Critics, I'm sure they're a good community, but they are definitely not VTuber related. Anyway, please remember to support and cherish your VTuber Oshis while they're around. Respect their boundaries and privacy, and appreciate when they choose to share personal information with you all out of trust, and don't ever abuse it. And also, remember to be normal, and that your favorite VTuber streamer probably will never fall in love with you. Keep your expectations real and your parasocialism to a minimum, at least as much as you can, and you'll have a great time watching VTubers. Till next time, everyone, keep it vibin'. Bye!